Hello again to our fellow multifaceted girlies. I'm Blake.
And I'm Ashlyn, and welcome back to another episode of The Suburban Black Girl. So, today's topic, we're talking about independence and whether what we call independence is actually emotional self-protection. And one thing we want you to take away is that being capable is not the same as being emotionally open.
Yeah, I think this is a particularly interesting conversation, especially for Black women.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are raised to be independent and to not need anything from anyone and to always be self-sufficient, right? And I think there's an extra layer added onto it if you are raised by a single mother, right? Or a lot of us are raised by a village, but it's usually a village of women.
Let's be honest.
Right? And so I feel like that kind of, I don't know if you would call it a value or not, but it's passed down and instilled from generation to generation for Black women raising little Black girls.
We are just always taught to be more independent than our peers. And I felt like that since I was a little girl. You know what I mean? We don't have as many technically resources and connections and et cetera that maybe some of our counterparts do. And I think a lot of times it's like our struggle is just a little harder, which builds our independence. And also I think it's hard when you don't see yourself in certain rooms. And so you have to be independent because you are the only one that looks like you and talks like you. And so, sometimes it does feel like you're quite alone. But I definitely think we've, as Black women, our independence starts a lot sooner and younger than other people. And regardless, I think if you're married, in a relationship, etc., we still, are always typically independent regardless and can hold our own.
And do you think something you just said made me have a thought? Do you feel like because we are raised this way, we are typically more mature than our peers? And maybe that's why I feel like sometimes little Black girls can be seen, I don't want to say more like adults, but like basically like less like they need help, like less like a child, right?
Right.
Like, oh, you're good,
Yeah. I do see that in a sense because, I think even growing up, I think I was a lot more self-sufficient than some of my peers were.
Yeah.
But I also think that's like a generational thing that's passed down to where it's kind of like, let's be honest, in a Black household, by the time you're 18, it's like, you grown.
Right.
Like Black parents are kicking you out the house sometimes. They're not paying for a car note, cell phone bill. And honestly, some don't even pay for college. But obviously, we know in other cultures and households, they're paying for college. They're paying for your cars, etc. I mean, I see videos all the time. These white girls on their daddy's Amex and they're like 25.
Yeah.
So I do think that, and let's be honest, in also other cultures, they're still seen as a child or not independent until they're married. It's kind of like their parents bear the weight of that independence. And then once they're married, then that, that type of like what?
Independence, self-sufficiency.
Yeah, like it's kind of passed down to like their husband to kind of take it on from there as far as just like providing for them, et cetera, or whatever that may be.
It starts in childhood, but something I've realized, and I feel like I sent you a video the other day about like when you spend so much time self-sufficient, it's like you actually very well at times don't need help, but getting used to asking for help regardless, because we always need something. Right. I feel like that's something I've been thinking about lately is like, you know what? I'm about to be a damsel in distress because you don't need to know whether I'm self-sufficient or not. Yes, I do need help actually,
No, I mean, literally, I think because a lot of us have seen our mothers literally figure it out themselves if someone else cannot help them versus acting like a damsel in distress. They literally find a way or make one. Right. So yeah, but I agree with that. I'm trying to find more ways to be the damsel in distress because it's like, if you don't really act that part, then everyone's going to always feel as though, oh, she's good.
Right. And no one's going to ask.
No, especially not when you're a Black woman.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just made me think of something I was just sharing with you before, how I had taken my boyfriend to the hospital. And I mean, I was in a wheelchair with him. You know how men are a little dramatic. And there were only 2 people that asked us for help versus the 10, 20, 30 plus people that had seen us kind of like struggling.
Mhm.
And I was thinking to myself in that moment, if I was another race, would someone have asked me if I needed help sooner? Because I just felt like people kind of looked at me like, oh, she's got it. She'll be
Right.
fine. They'll be all right.
Right.
And so I did wonder that to myself, like, why didn't more people ask if we needed help? And as
Mhm.
soon as those two ladies asked me if I needed help, I'm like, yes. Even though, of course, I could still
Clearly.
have figured it out, but it's like, yes, an extra hand would help.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
I think they see us, especially physically, right, needing help. I feel like they definitely see us as more capable. So,
Hmm.
there's less of an inclination to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. But also I think it's how we carry ourselves too, right? Because let's be honest, when a white woman is a damsel in distress, you can see it. Like she's like, oh, she's huffing and puffing, like
The
she's
drama.
doing it's so much drama. But with us, I think as black women, we hold it together. Even inside, it's like, gosh, like honestly, I could really use the help right now.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, shall we get into the questions?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you tell the difference between healthy independence and emotional guardness?
I almost feel like it is if you are burnt out, drowning, and your desire to be independent is stronger than like asking for help, receiving the help, then I feel like at that point, are you potentially just emotionally guarded,
Right.
you know? And I also think part of that being instilled in us is not needing to rely on anyone is like it's almost like a don't be vulnerable, right? Because
Right.
needing somebody else puts you in a position of vulnerability,
Yeah.
right? And I think, especially with the trials and tribulations and the traumas that come with growing up Black in America and being a Black woman in America on the day to day, we don't want to be vulnerable. And I feel like asking for help is a vulnerable thing to do,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that's another layer to it for sure.
And I like the question positioned as healthy independence because I
Mhm.
think we scream independent, independence, etc. But sometimes I do think our independence as Black women blocks us from potentially finding good relationships or good friendships, etc. Because we do have a strong sense of independence, but sometimes it can hurt us.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I've dated men where it does show up and they're kind of like, dang, like
Mhm.
you act like you got it. And I'm like, actually, no, I could use a hand
Mhm.
or two.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels as though independence is just not healthy. Even with me, if I do feel like, okay, I'm trying to be this independent person, sometimes I find myself in deep isolation. And I think a lot of us associate independence with isolation, kind of like, I'm going to do it all by myself. I'm going to be by myself. I'm going to kind of like lock myself in a room.
Mhm.
And though that can be healthy, I think some people really stick to that and they kind of just like live in their little small bubble.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's not healthy, right? I think we have to know when is the right time to, even if someone's reaching out trying to maybe help you or maybe get you out the house or just give you a phone call, trying to find ways to maybe even if you're in that hole or you want to be in that bubble, knowing when it's like, okay, let me come up for a little air.
Mhm.
Because sometimes I think when we're kind of, especially as the new year is starting to set in, a lot of us have these great goals we're trying to achieve. And I notice even with my friends and family now, we're all kind of like in our own bubbles because we're just trying to like figure it out.
Mhm.
Um, but I try to find ways to not get in it too deep because then it becomes like it could be a little scary.
Yeah. Have you found yourself in a position where you've probably been overly independent, honestly, out of fear
Hmm.
um, of needing to rely on someone or asking for help? Or do you feel like there was ever a phase in your life where you would literally rather do something on your own, even if it meant taking twice as long, let's
Right.
say, like being completely less efficient if it meant that you didn't have to ask for help or rely on anyone?
Absolutely, like, all the time. Like, I really am not a person that ever asks for help. If it's not my mom or my dad, I really typically do not ask for the help. I think because I don't like the letdown of reaching out and asking for help and
Mhm.
that person or that those people not being able to help me or
Mhm.
not help me the way that I need to be helped.
Mhm.
And I really don't like to be let down, so sadly, I rather just not ask at all. I
Yeah.
rather just figure it out on my own.
I feel like it definitely escalates for me after
Yeah.
being let down, like after something, I
Mhm.
don't know, maybe dramatic happening or
Yeah.
whatever. And sometimes it can really only take like one thing.
Literally.
I remember in a past relationship, I had asked, like, oh, can you help me wash my makeup brushes?
Mhm.
And actually, I don't even think I asked. I think he asked, what do you need help with?
Mhm.
And I said, oh gosh, I literally have not touched my makeup brushes and like
Mhm.
I have no clean ones left.
Right.
And well, we had to film an
Right.
episode. And my brushes did not get washed. Like it was days later, they were
Mhm.
not washed. So I had to like make do with the couple of random brushes that I had clean, plus
Yeah.
some like dirty ones. And of course, my makeup like turned out terrible.
Mhm.
And I hated the way I looked the entire fucking episode. And it's just stuff like that where it's like, I'm not asking you again.
Yep.
Now I'm just going to do it myself
Yeah.
because now I'm annoyed for the rest of this day because
Yeah.
I just tried to do my makeup and it came out terrible. And if I would have had some clean freaking brushes, then it wouldn't have.
No, no, literally. Like literally, and that is it.
Yeah.
But I do have friends that always ask for help.
Mhm.
And even it's like, let's be honest, do you ever have friends or family that may ask you for help? And maybe you can help them. There's times where you can really go all in and help them as they want you to. But what about those times where maybe you can't, or you say, hey, I just can't do it? Or maybe you don't do it to your best capability. Like, how do you feel like they react to that when you honestly cannot give the help that they truly need at that time?
I think it depends on the person and honestly
Hmm.
whether they're a true friend or not, because a true
Yeah.
friend is going to respect your capacity.
Right.
I don't want to say that as a blanket statement that somebody can't be your friend and they're not having a sensitive moment or something
Yeah.
like that. But I think a lesson that I've really been having to learn over the past year is that it is not my responsibility to regulate somebody else's emotions after I set a boundary. And it's not even
Mm.
like a hard boundary. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, I physically can't
Yeah.
today. And you can empathize with the fact that they needed your help and you don't got it that day,
Yeah.
but it's not your responsibility to like carry that disappointment for them.
Yeah.
That's on them. And if they're trying to put it on you, then that's something they need to work on
Mhm.
as a person and that's not for you to feel guilty about.
Right. No, I mean, absolutely. And I could have used that word a few days ago. No, just kidding.
Which word?
What you're just saying.
Oh, the whole thing. I was like,
Yeah.
"Wait, guilty? What which word?"
Because, I would say probably over the last like year or so, I've been working more on, yes, I'm a helping hand if needed, but also I need to start setting more boundaries with people as far as like, maybe I can't do it right now, or
Mhm,
I cannot do it to the capacity that you need me to do it.
mhm,
Like if someone asks me for help, I used to give like 100%, even though it's like I know I have other things to do.
mhm.
But as
Same.
of lately, I've learned to pull back from that or say, hey, I can do it, but maybe not right now, or I'll do it later. And you do, I get a little attitude back sometimes now. And I'm like, I'm sorry that I cannot show up to that full capacity that I once did, but I have a lot more on my plate now.
Yeah.
And now if someone reaches out asking me for certain things, I'm like, hey, this is what I got going on right now.
Mhm.
So I can't do it, or maybe I can only do this part. Or no offense, can you do something too to help your own
Right.
situation? Because you're asking me for help, but it's like,
Mhm.
and what are you doing to help this situation too? Because I feel like
Yeah.
I'm solving your problem for you,
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I go through that often, and I'm trying to get a little more strict on my boundaries because I'm like, mm-mm.
And you have to. You have to. I feel like I
Mm-hmm.
spent a whole year not, and yeah, it affected me. So
Mm-hmm.
it's I feel like in conversations with people, it's something a lot of us are working on,
Yeah.
truth be told. So,
Yeah, I think especially as our plates get more full, it also frustrates me when the people that are asking me for things know what I truly have going on. And especially
mhm,
if I tell you something even days prior that I'm going through or have going on, and you're asking me for help, I'm like, you know what I'm going through currently. So why do you think I have the capacity to help you with this right now?
yeah.
And then you're asking me last minute, like, I don't know. That stuff just frustrates me a bit. So, but I can go on a tangent.
I feel we have an episode coming up about that in coming weeks, I feel.
Ooh,
So, the
can't wait.
hold the tangent for a couple episodes.
Hopefully, I'll be simmered down by
We'll,
then.
we'll return.
Why is emotional self-sufficiency praised even when it leads to isolation?
And I feel like I just touched on this, right? Because I think the isolation is important because you learn emotional regulation. I say that because that is our jobs independently.
Mhm.
You can address with someone why what they did, how it affected you,
Mhm.
right? But it's not really anyone else's responsibility per se to soothe us. And I don't mean like leaning reassurance in a relationship. I mean like if you are spiraling, like that's nobody else's job to regulate yourself but your own,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that is why emotional, self-sufficiency is important.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a healthy balance of like relying on your village,
Mhm.
during hard times and things like that. But to what you were just talking about, right? Like everybody has their own stuff going on.
Yeah.
So people are going to show up for you as much as they can, but you can't expect people all the time to just put aside what they have going on because you are hurting. Like,
Yeah.
yes, of course, you don't want to have friends that aren't going to show up for you, or it's
Right.
disappointing if your family doesn't show up for you. But at the end of the day, we are responsible for ourselves. Other people
Right.
are not responsible for ourselves and our emotions. So I think that time alone, though painful, teaches you how to regulate yourself and how to sit with your feelings, right? Because people
Mhm.
don't like to do that. So they want to trauma dump onto other people,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
they want to be outside distracting themselves, right? And so I don't see isolation as a bad thing all the time.
Mhm.
Like you have to sit with what you're feeling and process it. Otherwise, it just comes out later,
Yeah.
you know?
No, you're so right. You're so right. And that's why it's like I was saying earlier, it's fine to have your isolation, but obviously make sure it's in a healthy way.
Mhm.
And I also wonder if I think we are both pretty like emotionally self-sufficient, but I also wonder if that comes from a part of it comes from us being only children.
Yeah.
Because I do notice I'm a lot more self-sufficient than a lot of the people that I know.
Mhm.
Like, no offense, I don't need anyone to make me feel good or happy or pick me up when I'm feeling down, etc. Like I can
Mhm.
kind of soothe myself. But also I don't think I think, obviously if I'm going through things, like I work on that within myself and I kind of just like stay to myself or do something just with who I am and by myself versus going outside or texting a random ex to cuddle for the night. Like, those
Yeah.
those those bad decisions. Of course I would do that when I was younger, but now I'm like, no, it's literally a setback when you do stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's hard for a lot of people to get to that point. So if someone would like to get to that point, but they just don't know how would you suggest them to find a way to become more just emotionally self-sufficient?
I think you literally have to force yourself to spend time alone. Something that I like to do, I like to have my tea, and I've talked about this before, but literally sitting in silence.
Yeah, you talk about that a lot.
Yeah, because we live in a world with so much noise. You have to be able to sit down, feel what you're feeling, but hear your own thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think even if it's like for 15 minutes, if you do that every day and then journal it out afterwards, because to me, journaling is the release that maybe you would have dumped on a friend.
I mean, right,
you know?
right.
So that's what I would recommend because I think clearly when I spend time by myself and I'm just sitting in silence and you can really digest everything and understand yourself better. Yeah, and then writing it down is a release. And if you're not into journaling, or if you are more spiritual, sitting in that silence and then praying, because
Mhm.
praying has the same effect of, and honestly, I use my journal more like a prayer journal, right? Because
I
for
love that.
me, it takes a while for me to like dump it on the page because
Yeah,
there's a lot of thoughts. So I like to take my time writing it down, whereas I'm
right.
not going to pray for 30 minutes straight, but I
Yeah,
will journal for almost that long.
right.
So I think that's important. But number one is getting the will to do it because that's step one.
Yeah.
You know how like step one is like admitting you have a problem? Like step one is actually taking the time to be alone. That's what people don't like to do because it is
Mhm.
really, really painful to sit with yourself and have to acknowledge your feelings.
Yeah.
And then also, I would say, if you're open to it, therapy, because I always say, like, you can be self aware or understand things about yourself. And I think sitting with yourself also helps you become more self aware. But at the end of the
Mhm.
day, therapy is a mirror. And I also think therapy can give you tools that you may not think of. Like, I think journaling is a tool. I think praying is a tool. Maybe your therapist can give you other tools like, I don't know, breath work, whatever it is. Honestly, sometimes
Yeah.
when I'm feeling anxious, that's a form of like being emotionally unregulated, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And sometimes I literally like take a deep breath in, like, and exhale slowly 3 times. And it literally, you can like feel your blood pressure going down when you
I
do that, I
believe it.
swear.
Yeah.
So those are all things. It's like before you spiral and like
Yeah.
need to trauma dump on somebody, like just sit with yourself for a
Right.
second and then breathe.
Right.
So that's what I would say. Breathing, journaling, praying, yeah. Touching grass. I'm reading one of my New Year's goals was to read one book a month.
That's really
Um
good, Blake.
yeah.
Wow. I
Um
still need to like figure that out.
so I'm currently reading The Power of Positive Thinking, and that's something
Yes.
that the author talks about. He doesn't say touch grass, but he literally says like go outside, get fresh air, like hear nature, right? Because our
Yes.
lives are so loud, so busy, so overstimulating.
Yeah.
He also talks about the pace that we live at is honestly not healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have a choice. We all have to get up, work 9 to 5, pay bills,
Come on.
have side jobs, like still try and pour into ourselves, still try and
Mhm.
make time for friends and family and stay in touch with people. And it's like there's literally not enough hours in the day to do that.
Yeah.
And I do think the way that we live is honestly counterproductive to how we actually are
Right.
as human beings. But that's something that he talks about. One is praying, but also, yeah, literally go outside and be able to just hear the silence of nature.
Yeah.
And I literally laughed to myself when I read it because I was like, oh, this is something I actually do, sit in silence. And one of his like recommendations was like find time every day to sit in silence, even if it's just a couple of
Mm.
um minutes a day. So
It also made me think about, I think with us both doing dry January, a lot of people self-cope with drinking, smoking, vaping, etc.
mhm.
And I do believe that a lot of us obviously bottle our emotions up and use that drug or whatever it is to kind of like self cope. And sometimes
Mhm.
I think, like, I have certain people that refuse to do dry January.
Mhm.
And I understand, but sometimes I do think we need a break
Mhm.
from all that stuff because it really is unhealthy to be dependent on those type of things. Like sometimes you really just need to cleanse
Mhm.
because it's easy when we're upset or frustrated to I'm gonna go I'm gonna go have me a drink. Like I'm gonna go roll this
Facts.
blunt.
Pour one
That's
up.
easy. That's easy. But to sit in your, to sit in silence and to self isolate sober,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's different.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to do, especially for the new year, because let's be honest, the holidays, a lot of us have a lot going on. There's a lot of parties, events, etc. And so I think it's really even for me, even if it's not dry January, and I feel like I'm kind of going too hard, and I'm kind of just like scattered brained, I will be like, you know what, you're not drinking for the rest of the month.
Yeah.
Or if there's something else that I'm just doing too much of, I'm like, you're gonna chill from that because I kind of use it as a coping mechanism when it's like that's not healthy. You
Mhm.
need to be, you know, a little more just self-sufficient and being able to like get through those things without coping with other things like that. So,
Yeah, and honestly, and I guess I'll be transparent in this moment that I feel like the past couple weeks have all been a lot for me personally. Like work has been absolutely annoying and I'm overworked and underpaid. And then I also ended my relationship at the same time, going into the new year. And obviously, this morning, my dog was put down, my family dog, and he would have been 17 next month, literally a month from yesterday. He would have been
oh,
17. And I was like on the phone with my mom last night, and I was like, terrible month for dry January. Because yeah, I really just wanted to have a drink. And
Yeah.
I really wanted an espresso martini with a chocolate chip cookie. I'm not going to lie. That is really what I wanted. And
Yeah.
it really made me realize because, again, another transparent moment, but like I started this year 20, almost 20, 17 pounds heavier than I probably started last year.
Mm.
And yeah, maybe some of it was like happy relationship weight in the beginning of the
Right.
year. But then as the year went on and like I was having to work 12-hour days, and then
Mhm.
I started to slowly become unhappy in my relationship. Like I was having a drink every day after work, or I was eating
Mm.
comfort food,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you blow up.
Yep.
And so this month, and honestly, in this moment, even with like my dog passing, it's like I've had to find healthy ways to regulate myself
Yeah.
without relying on food, alcohol.
Yep.
I don't smoke weed. And yeah, I'm doing dry January. I'm trying to fast. So I'm literally only eating like meat, fish, fruit, and vegetables. And yeah, last night I really wanted a cookie, but um so this whole month I've been praying, journaling,
Mhm.
sitting with my feelings. And the other thing I forgot about, which you do, obviously, is exercise.
Yeah.
And one, because I want to lose some freaking weight, but also, it gives you a dopamine rush to your brain.
And those.
Yeah. And so that's a way of releasing before you have to, you know, go dump on a friend. And that's not to
Yeah.
say that I haven't leaned on friends over the course of the past month.
Right.
Of course, I've talked to a lot of my friends
Yeah.
on the phone, but at the same time, again, everybody has to live their own lives. And a lot of my closest friends don't live here,
Right.
so people are busy. They're not going to
Mhm.
answer when you pick up the phone or whatever. And so, yeah, if you get better at regulating yourself independently, then you will be less offended when a
Mhm.
friend is like, I just can't today,
Right.
you know.
Right.
As far as working on becoming more of a damsel in distress and being better at asking for help, like what does that look like for you on the other side? Like what
Mhm.
does that look like, let's say from a man, even though you're in a relationship, or a person and even a friend, like what does how do they show up and what does that look like where you feel like, okay, I can 1000% rely on this person and I don't need to be Bobbiana the Builder doing it all on my own.
Oh my gosh. I would say for me, I think definitely my relationship, I've learned to be the damsel in distress for sure. I've
Mhm,
learned to ask my partner for help when I need it, and sometimes even when I don't need it, but he's
mhm,
there. So I'm like, can you can you do that? You know
mhm.
what I mean? Which is a big, huge step for me because I never felt in a safe enough environment with a man prior to him to where I would ask for help and I felt as though he would give me the help I needed.
So what is he doing that makes the environment safe?
Great question. I would say just the little things, like honestly helping us set up the podcast equipment.
Mhm,
He helps me with that.
mhm,
Like I left early, and when I came home, everything was set up. That helps me a lot. Before I would be dragging everything up and down, trying to get everything set up, and so him just helping me like set things up, knowing I have a busy morning before we film, and I come home and everything is ready to go. You know
mhm,
what I mean? But also just, I think it's the little things for me. It's just having a home and maybe my toilet's not working
mhm.
or my trash obviously is full, like making sure he's taking those things out and doing those things without me even asking. And so it's I think it's the little things, and sometimes it's the things where I don't ask for it, but it's just kind of done just because there's things that I do for him without him asking me to do it.
Mhm.
So I think we try our best to reciprocate energy and always do good things and nice things for each other. But I also am trying to do that more with my friendships too, because I don't really feel like I ask a lot of my friends for help.
Mm.
Um, because like I said, I just don't like to be let down, but I'm working on doing that more and finding ways to do that because I don't mind when people rely on me in friendships, but it would be nice for friends to kind of like help here and there or
Yeah.
be like, you know what, I think she would, need this.
Mhm.
But I do have some friends that do show up for me in ways that know me and kind of can just like read me and know like, okay, I think she could use this right now. But
Mhm.
definitely learning to ask more for help this year, I would say for sure.
Yeah. I think for me, and I agree with you, one on the observing you,
Yeah.
knowing your schedule, knowing what you need, and there's a certain safety that comes with not having to ask,
Right.
right? Like you just him just knowing, oh, she's filming today, let me set, everything up.
Yeah.
Or, oh, the trash is full, let me take it out. Like there is something where if you don't have to ask and people are just observant and intelligent enough
Yeah.
to see and to throw out the helping hand, then you feel more comfortable asking when
Right.
when you do need something.
Exactly.
I think there's that, but I also think for me there's a level of not just somebody doing what they say they're going to do, but doing what they say they're going to do consistently over an extended period of
Come
time
on.
that
Yeah.
creates the level of safety where I would feel comfortable asking, because to
Yeah.
me that's building trust in the fact that I can rely on you,
Yeah.
and then I don't have to be irritated by asking and then it
Right.
doesn't get done. I can have the confidence that it's going to get done, because
Mhm.
you've exhibited that you are a reliable friend.
Right. I mean,
So,
no, for sure. I absolutely agree with that too, because I think a lot of people can start off strong and
mhm,
then it kind of starts to dwindle. And it's kind of like you never get that same version again. It's like, okay,
mhm,
well. And it's funny you bring up before when you bring up the damsel in distress. Before I got in my relationship, I remember having lunch with a friend, and she's in a really healthy relationship, great partner, etc. And she was like giving me, she's a little older than me. And she was like, when you're in a relationship, she was like, be the damsel in distress. She
mhm,
was like, literally, she was like, a door's not that heavy, but she's like, if I go to the door, I'm like, oh, babe, this door is so heavy. And he'll come like running to open the door for me. She's like, that door ain't heavy. She's like, but he gonna open it. And so
mm,
she was like, men like to feel, and the right man, right, will make you feel as though, oh my gosh, she's a damsel in distress. Like, let me help her. Like, she needs help. And
mm,
so I thought that was wise advice because I don't hear many women talking about that.
mhm,
But I've honestly tried it in the beginning in my relationship and it's worked.
mhm,
But in the past, I wasn't doing that. I always was acting like, oh, I got it. I got it. I can do it on my own. But then
mhm.
I noticed that when I would ask the man for help, they kind of would look at me like, you sure? Like, you really need help? Like, yeah. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So be the damsel in distress.
Is there an aspect of independence that you fear losing?
Yeah, I think for me, I do want to get married one day. And so I think when I do get married, I do fear that because when you are married, you are no longer, it's not just you anymore.
Mhm,
You're not just coming home to you, you're not on your own schedule or routine, you're not just thinking of you. I think your whole idea of what you want to do or things that you want to achieve, it could be kind of different. And so that is my fear. Even having children, I do want to have children one day, and I fear losing the independence of sleeping 8 hours a night.
mhm.
I hear that you don't get sleep back. Also, my schedule is going to change. I'm like, when am I going to have time to kiki with the girls and work out and go get my nails done without rushing home to pick kids up from daycare or whatever it may be, or have to tend to them? So I do fear the next level of where I want to go as far as just like being this person. It's going to change when I'm married and have children. So I do fear that
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah, I would agree that I fear losing myself, yeah, in another person. And
That's
honestly,
real. That's
like
real. That's
the
real.
way you see so many women happily married and unhappily married saying, "Do not get married,"
No, seriously.
is a little alarming. Um, yeah, because I would never want to fall down the hole of becoming an involuntary servant. Like, yeah, I personally feel like as women, we are just more capable.
Yeah.
And I feel like we actually are natural born leaders and the actual heads of the household, in my opinion. And yeah, I think my my fear of my independence would be just losing myself in serving other people, right? And that's a part of all of our purpose, right? Your purpose
Right.
has to be something in helping other people. That's not what I mean. But in losing, yeah, your individuality, your
Yeah.
independence, and just your life is no longer yours at all,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. No, it's real. It's so funny you said that because I was watching this TikTok recently of this woman, and she was like this happily married white woman, and she was just saying how like she's married. She was in her 40s, and she was saying how like I remember being in college and wanting this what I have now as far as being married, having a home, beautiful family. She's like, but now that I'm here, she was like, why did I want to get here so bad? She was like, I miss coming home at random hours of the nights with my roommates, not knowing like where we were going to lay our heads and, not knowing what tomorrow brought or
Mhm,
just waking up with no expectation or
mhm.
obligation. And it's like, that's so true. It's so true. And so I'm glad we're having this little dialogue because it's a real fear for a lot of women. I think especially of the friends and the people that we know in our generation. A lot of us are kind of like, we're not as quick to jump in a relationship, marriage, have children, because we know what that truly comes with.
And I think 2 things just came to mind too is, one, you see a lot of older women saying that they wish they lived by themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that a lot of us take for granted is like,
Mhm.
if you get your own apartment and you can decorate it how you want and it's always
Mhm.
clean and it's your space, I feel like a lot of people are probably in that phase right now and they're
Yeah.
like dying for their husband and to move in together and to start having kids. And a lot of people wish that they had their own girly decorated
Come
apartment
on.
and lived by themselves, you know? And it's funny because I've seen it across, heard it across generations. I have a
Mhm.
friend that is the same age as us
Mhm.
that is married,
Mhm.
and she said, yeah, enjoy living by yourself. Enjoy having your apartment. Like enjoy it.
Yeah.
And also I have a family member that's in her 70s and having to do a lot of caretaking for her husband and her father,
Mhm.
and she's like, and constantly cleaning up after people. And I was like over her house and she was cleaning up and she was just literally like, man, I wish I could live alone. She was like, I would be so happy if I could just live alone,
Wow.
and even
Yeah.
at that age. And yeah, it honestly has me thinking like, I don't know, what could that dynamic possibly look like in a marriage and having children?
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I feel like kids are different. Like cleaning up after a kid is different, but for me, I just cannot see myself cleaning up after a grown man for the rest of my life. Um, and in the last episode when I was, or 2 episodes ago, whatever it was, when I was talking about the amount of alone time I need, I'm like,
Yeah.
I genuinely do not know how I will grow up and live with another person. Like, I don't want to, even a husband. Like, even if
Mhm.
I love you dearly, but I don't know. I don't know what that's gonna look like for me, and I'll deal with it when that day comes. But
Right.
when we talk about a fear of losing independence, I think that's what that looks like for me, is never having any time alone because it's such a requirement for me to feel good,
Yeah.
and not just like, on Mother's Day or when you're like, or like
Right.
your
Yeah,
husband gets
absolutely
you
not.
something to go to the spa and it's like your one day not serving somebody else
Yeah.
for the whole
Mm-mm.
year. That sounds like a nightmare to me.
Yeah, no. That's gotta be, yeah. Mm-mm. On a monthly basis.
Right.
There has to be boundaries with that. That's why I'm like, I'm not living nowhere where my village is not.
Yeah.
'Cause oh no.
Or that's why I always like that day we were talking with Jayla and everyone, and it was like, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm gonna need like $5 million before I can
Oh
have a
yeah.
kid. And maybe not five, but like, yeah, I don't live where my family is.
Yeah.
So I either need to move back and or 2 nannies.
You're
And you
right.
see you see rich people having multiple for
Oh
one
yeah.
kid.
Literally.
Like, yeah, I don't
Literally.
know. That's gonna have to be me.
'Cause yeah, no. We all need, yeah, I still wanna feel independent as possible even when that next phase comes for sure.
Yeah.
So today's mantra moment is you don't have to prove you're strong by doing everything alone. Strength can look like letting someone just show up for you.
Yes, I think when you are truly strong, you are able to leave room for support regardless. And something else I thought of earlier was just ask yourself, am I doing this, like saying no, let's say, or not asking for help because I have a fear of being vulnerable or feel like I, can't rely on anyone? Or are you choosing to be independent in that moment because you truly will feel like self-fulfilled? Because I think there's a
Mm.
difference, right? Because there is
Yeah.
something that feels good about being able to do something or pay for something on your own. Like, obviously, everything I just ranted about is the way it feels good
Yeah.
to be independent. But yeah, like in those moments, ask yourself, like, am I just saying no because like I'm good and I really am self-sufficient? Or like, am I just coming from a traumatized perspective and afraid to ask for help? So, and even if you do feel good and confident and self-sufficient, still ask for help.
Literally. Be that damsel in
If
distress
someone's
girl.
offering, take it, even
Mhm.
if you're good. So please let us know what you guys think about this episode. If you feel like you've experienced a lot of this stuff and being over independent. But yeah, please write us. Let us know what you guys think about this topic. If you could relate, I'm sure many people can, to being a bit over independent. Next week, we are going to be talking about sisterhood and is it making us avoid hard conversations? Yeah.
I like that.
So please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, follow us on all platforms at Suburban Black Girl Pod. Email us at suburbanblackgirlpod@gmail.com. If you're watching on Spotify or Apple, please give us a great rating. And we'll see you next week.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.